Hey guys, it's Kay from KS Anonymous, and I am back today with another episode of r/TreeLaw. Advice on compensation for trees, AT. Hi there, I wanted to ask for a little bit of advice in case someone may know. The deal is that we are selling quite a bit of our ground, so apartments can be built there, and to access them, they have to make a driveway through the rest of our ground. The thing is, in order to do that, they have to get rid of 3 of my apple trees, which are about 100 years old and 2 to 3 meters tall. Now, in one of the initial negotiations for the sale, they agreed to substitute them with 3 new apple trees, each one 2 meters tall at least, but now they are claiming they never agreed to such a thing. My mother even recorded everything, but because she did it secretly, we can't use this in a legal situation. I actually propose that she just makes a written accord of what the voice recordings, but even then I don't know if we can use this. I'm asking for help on this because I don't know what I can do about it. These trees will be ripped down and they are worth quite a lot, for they have always had fruits which we harvested. I really hope someone knows something that can help and would appreciate every answer. Thanks. You say selling, not sold. If you don't have a signed contract yet, simply insist on getting value for the trees or the deal is off. Given that this is going sideways already, I would suggest you're better off with an appropriate dollar amount and replace the trees yourself. If you do have a contract, as others have said, check if you are in a one-party consent locality. You could tree spade them and out them somewhere else too. It's a truck-mounted machine that digs them up and moves them. Hard to do to apple trees. They don't take well to being moved. Source, I work on an apple orchard. Not an attorney. If you're in a one-party consent state, you can use the recording even if it was done in secret, as long as one person in the conversation was aware and okay with it being recorded. Okay, so when they're saying like a one-party consent law, if you're not familiar, basically that means there are different laws for different states. So, for example, in the state that I live in, we are considered a one-party consent state when it comes to recordings. So if I'm in a conversation, so I'm engaging in the conversation, I can record that conversation legally and use it legally because I was part of the conversation. Now, if I was just sitting next to some people having a conversation and was not part of that conversation, I would not legally be allowed to record and use that recording. However, in some other states, everyone, or I think it's everyone, has to be aware that the recording is happening. And this actually becomes an issue with phone calls. And that's why some companies will let you know, hey, you're going to be recorded for quality assurance, blah, blah, blah. And also why I think it was Taylor Swift and somebody else, that thing that blew up, because technically depending on where each person was when the phone call occurred, the recording couldn't legally be released. That it's just such a weird state kind of thing, but the state that I live in, if I want to record conversations I'm having with other people, I don't have to tell them. So it does really depend on where this person is if they can use that, but they do seem pretty confident that they can't, so hopefully they can figure out the whole apple tree situation. Help! My neighbor clear-cut my backyard. My husband and I moved into a lovely old 1902 farmhouse near downtown Indianapolis in 2018. We picked this particular house because the plot has an acre of land, and the old trees around the property line gave us a ton of natural privacy and a lovely shaded backyard for our dogs to run on nice days. About a month ago, we were clearing fallen limbs when we noticed our backyard neighbor were trimming the trees on the property line, or so we thought. We left for the weekend, and when we came back, the whole property line had been clear cut. All bushes, honeysuckle, saplings, and at least 2 large, full-grown trees were completely gone. They even ripped out the stumps. It has taken me a while to post about it because I have been so heartbroken. I hadn't even walked back there to look at the damage because I just couldn't stomach it. A jogger scared me nearly to death when they cut through my yard to get to the neighboring street. The whole dynamic of this property has changed for the worse. I was alerted by a dear friend that this subreddit exists, and I'm asking for opinions and help. We don't have much extra money. I'm not sure if we can hire a lawyer, let alone pay for a survey. Are there any other options to get this sorted? Am I SOL because they took away all the evidence? I have before pictures I will try to post when I figure out how to do that. Thank you for reading, and any advice you can give is much appreciated.
Question: were the trees on your side of the fence or theirs? Did they come out of the ground on your side of the fence or theirs? They can only remove what's on their side of the fence.
They were on my side of the fence. They also removed the fence, by the way.
I am not a lawyer, but I do love some tree law. This is practical advice, not legal advice.
The fence is not necessarily relevant. The property line is. You need to check the survey that you got when you were buying the house to be sure the trees were on your property, not just your side of the fence. If the trees were actually on his property, there is nothing you can do. They're his trees. If they were on your property, nail his A. Get any pictures you can of the backyard as recent as you can. This includes Google Maps satellite pictures. Then call a lawyer who does tree law. They can help you from there. If the court finds your neighbor screwed up, they owe you for the cost of replacing the trees. Not with saplings, except for the saplings, but with the ground trees of comparable height, age, and health, as in moving them in and planting them. You can use that cost to replace the trees, plant different trees, or nothing at all. If Indiana is a state with treble damages, it could be 3 times that. Example, if the trees would cost $50,000 to replace, neighbor might owe you $150,000. If you didn't get a survey when buying, as is usually the case, get one. Start by checking to see if your county's website, if there is one, has GIS maps, which show your property lines overlaid by satellite photos. Failing that, hire a surveyor. You've got a big claim on your hands if they cross the property line to do what they did. You can't use GIS data as an accurate line. It's allowed to be up to 30 feet off. Boundary surveys are allowed to be up to 2 feet off across a mile and are not admissible as evidence. The only valid survey you can use as evidence is an ALTA survey. Maximum deviation is 2 centimeters plus 1 part per 50 million, i.e. 51 inches of deviation across 15 miles. If your neighbors have boundary surveys and you have an ALTA, it legally supersedes their surveys as it is the more accurate version. It's a good place to start. Unless the survey is very old, it's likely to be pretty accurate. My county's GIS plot data is within an inch of my actual survey pins put into the ground 24 years ago, so GIS can be right on the money. Can be. But as someone who's done that job before, I can tell you, they often aren't. Garbage in, garbage out in a lot of cases, and many times we were just left guessing. Yes, excellent point. The fence may not be on the property line. My comment is based on the assumption that the fence is on the property line, but that's not necessarily the case. Even if you can't afford a new boundary line survey, you very well may be able to find your property lines. In some states, surveys are filed on public record. You can use this to find your lot corners, which will be marked with some kind of stake. Assuming a straight property line, you can probably eyeball to confirm it was on your property. If it's real close to the line, you may have a boundary tree situation, which can vary based on your state law. In some states, either side has right to trim or remove. I'm in the surveying business, not your state, not your surveyor, and this is always my first advice. The easiest corners to find are the corners on the back line because the street frontage can change elevation. In most jurisdictions, there are statutes against disturbing property corners set by a surveyor. If you can't find the corner where you think it should be, a metal detector might help you if the rebar is buried. If you look at the GIS parcel data, look at the tax data card. That can give you a plat book reference if there is a subdivision plat. Or look at your deed and you should have a legal description based upon a survey, the bearings and distances for each property line.
The other information you need: how long was the fence and the location. I've seen fences misplaced along property lines due to drainage easements, driveways, and topography. If you maintained and asserted ownership of the property, including paying taxes, that is evidence your neighbor cut your trees. So I really hope they find out if that was actually their property. In one sense, I hope it's not, because that's horrible that someone would just clear cut someone else's property. And then in the other sense, kind of, if they find out it is, at least they can get what they wanted back. Those trees, and how they moved into that property kind of partially for that. So I don't know, it's kind of a tricky thing, but hopefully they can get some direction off of the advice here. Looking for advice. Is it anything I can do about my neighbors cutting down trees in his backyard? They don't own the property, and it's starting to become a lot of trees they are cutting down. Who owns the land the trees are on? They need to be notified. Property owners need to be notified. If they approve, SOL. If he doesn't own the land, then he is committing property destruction. Contact the owner of the land. Inform them that your neighbor is cutting down trees in their land. It is also a huge liability for them, so reminding them of that is a good idea as well. Unless the landowner allowed it, contact the landowner and do not hesitate, do not delay. At best, the owner gave permission. If not, the neighbor may not think this is a big deal, but it is. The guy doing the cutting could be liable for the cost of replacement trees, as in living trees of the same size, health, and age, bought in and planted. Not saplings, not wood value. And depending on the state, he could have to pay treble costs, meaning if the cost to replace the trees is $5,000, he has to pay $15,000. Start taking pictures every day to document any changes that happen. And finally, and this is very important, pet the dog and tell him he's a good boy for me, or good girl. Just the bestest. Make them ears flop and tail wag. I agree with everything here, but that last point is critical. If my neighbor's house is like mine, I don't know if this is common, but mine is rent to own, but we also pay rent on the land, which isn't rent to own. So I don't really know, even if he was to own the house, he would be able to do this. I'll see about contacting the owner as soon as possible. Also, task to pet doggo, successful. Dog is happy for now. He's a boy, and sadly my neighbors don't treat him well, along with their other dogs. Many times they are locked in cages for days at a time. Renting the land doesn't mean you can chop down trees any more than renting the house means you can tear down walls. So I'm glad that the very, very important task of giving doggo to pets has happened. It's a cute puppy. I call dogs of all ages puppies, but yikes. Hopefully they have the right to cut down those trees. It's so weird to me because having had to cut down a tree in my backyard, obviously not me myself, but my husband, and working with his family to do all that, it is a very intensive job and it's expensive. So I don't know why people would do this and not have permission. New development company cut down half of a beautiful tree. According to their orange property line was on my side. My house on left, their development on the right. What are my next steps? Contact them? Call an arborist to value the tree before they remove what's left. Take lots of photos. Call a surveyor so you can precisely determine if the tree was yours or not. You can try contacting the development, but odds are good they're just going to lawyer up. Trees, especially fully grown trees, are extremely expensive to move, replant, etc., and their insurance company is the one with the lawyers. It's very easy for some 21-year-old new on-the-job logger to make a mistake, but it's very difficult to rectify it. Get all the proof you can before the site is cleared, or they'll just say the tree was on their side and you can't prove otherwise. Go take a crap ton of good photos. The one you've posted here is not a good photo. Get the property line, the size of the tree, where it fell, the hole it left, the entire scene. Take too many photos, then take a few more. Do not let them replace your fully grown tree with some mass-grown sapling that'll die in a year and call it even. Contact the city to get the real propriety line, and you can contact the company too. Do you think the city will charge me for that information? Normally they don't. No city government I've ever heard of would do that. You would need to hire a private surveyor to figure out exactly where the property line is on the ground. Well, my parents just did it a couple of years ago to be sure their fences would be built inside property lines. Some do, but if they do, it's something like $8 plus 50 cents a page for copies or something. It's not significant. Well, I hope that they're able to get that settled with the company and that they're not just shut down with lawyers or anything like that. Anyway, that is actually going to wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and drop a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Real quick, I would like to thank my patrons. Up on the screen, you should see my face palmers and my crazy case. Thank you all so much for supporting me in that way. If you're interested in becoming a patron, checking out the original posts that we went over in this video, or sending me an email for possible inclusion in a future video, all of that information is in the description box, so be sure to check that out. And I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!